Hi everyone, Jill here. Lovely to see you all. I wondered, do any of you know how tall you are? What your height is if you measure it? Measure it in centimetres or feet and inches. So I am quite tall. I am 5'7", which is 170 centimetres tall. So compare how tall you are to me. But then I was reading this book the other day. Have you come across this book? The Guinness World Records. Lots of amazing facts and records that people have done, like the fastest this and the biggest this and the longest that and the quickest this. This is what caught my eye, the tallest person. So this is the tallest man currently alive. His name is Sultan. And he lives in Turkey normally, but he came to visit London just to stand against tall things in London. So I am 170 centimetres and Sultan is 251 centimetres. That makes him 81 centimetres taller than me. And how much taller is he than you? Goodness me, he might be a whole metre and a half. Crazy, really tall man. But it reminds me of when I was on holiday as well. A few years ago, I went to a lovely holiday in a country called Austria, which is in Europe. And we went to a really interesting museum, which was in a castle. And in one of the rooms we walked into, there were armour, coats of armour. You imagine like the knights in the armour, like King Arthur and all that sort of thing. And so these suits of armour were there. And they were from, I think, a couple of hundred years ago, like maybe 300-400 years ago. And we know that if you go back 400 years ago, people were just a little bit shorter on average than they are now. So you've got all these quite cute little suits of armour there for their normal soldiers. And then there's this huge piece of armour for another one of their soldiers. I'm just going to show you a picture now. Now, isn't that crazy? This guy was obviously just really tall. He was like, a bit like Sultan, just tall compared to everyone else in the day. Now, do you know who the tallest man in the Bible was? It was a man called Goliath. Now, Goliath was from a group of people called the Philistines. The Philistines were like this big enemy of the Jewish people, and they were at war. They were like one side here on this hillside, one side on that side, and the Jewish people were just scared of these Philistines. They probably weren't particularly nice anyway, but they had crazy tall Goliath. And when you see someone who's like really tall, it can be a bit scary, can't it? Can you imagine? And he was like a wrestler, like John Cena, if you know who he is, would go like, "Who will fight me? Who will come take me on?" And the Jews were like, I don't want to fight him. I don't want to fight him. But who did fight him? Well, it was a little boy. This boy's called David. And he's not even in the army. He's got his big brothers who are in the army, and his mum's to send him off with the lunch to go give it to them for the day. Normally, he's back at home looking after sheep. But he thinks, I'll take him on. I'll take him on. And they were like, well, look, you're so small you can barely even hold a sword. So I don't need a sword. And what did he get? He got something which would have been quite useful as a shepherd. Was a slingshot. Now this is just a hair bobble, but this is the sort of thing a slingshot would do. You'd put your little rock in there and you'd fling it across the room, and he would have used that maybe to scare off like wild animals from his sheep. So it was probably quite a good aim, like he probably could have got it where he wanted, but at the end of the day it was just a little slingshot. But he said, I will fight Goliath. All I need is this slingshot. But also what he had was a great belief and faith, which means putting his trust in God. And he wanted to do this for God because he knew that the Philistines wanted to destroy God's people, the Jewish people. So he goes down. He takes his slingshot. Who will fight me? I bet Goliath must have been laughing, quite frankly. Ha! A little boy is going to fight me. Gosh, aren't you a bunch of scaredy cats over there, sending a little boy to come and fight me? No problem. But David takes his little stone, he puts it in his slingshot and hits Goliath in the forehead. Goliath crashes to the ground, and that is it. He is defeated. And because he's defeated, the Philistines are all suddenly scared and they all just run off. So that little boy, David, took it on. How brave is that? So I don't expect any of you to ever have to be in a position where you have to face a giant like Goliath. But there are things in our lives that maybe we get a bit fearful of, that we get scared of. You know, fear is perfectly normal. It's a very normal part of life because we get scared of things. You know, I didn't like the dark when I was younger. Now I don't really like roller coasters, and I definitely don't like mice, especially if they're in my house. But what the Bible talks about is something called courage. Now, courage is being able to face your fears. And that's something really important that we should all be able to have. And the best thing is, the Bible tells us that God can give us courage. For David, that courage meant standing up to Goliath, a man much older than him, much taller than him. For Jesus' disciples, that courage allowed them to stand up and face a lot of angry people who didn't want to hear them, but stand up and speak boldly about what Jesus had done. And for you guys, maybe it's just the courage to stand up and take a penalty. Stand up if you can see something is wrong, and stand up and say, call it out, say that's not right. You shouldn't be behaving like that. That's not a nice way to act. If you see someone being unkind or bullying, you can tell them to stop. But it takes courage because we have a little bit of niggly doubt and fear sometimes that, ooh, can I do it? Should I do it? Over here behind me is a poster which I put on my wall of celebrating the fact, marking the fact that I got to the top of a very high mountain out in Asia called Mount Kinabalu. Probably one of my best achievements, but I was a little bit fearful when I stood at the bottom of that mountain thinking, gosh, am I actually going to make it up there? But as I walk up foot in front of the other, I know that I'm not walking up alone. I know that God is beside me. I can draw on that strength like a power. I think that's what David had. He knew he had God by his side. He couldn't see him, but he could feel his power. Now, I'm wondering, have I got the courage to eat a lemon? Let's have a little look, shall we? I don't know if you've ever tried to eat a lemon, but this is my challenge. Can I be bold enough to eat? Oh, even the smell of it gets me. Can I put this in my mouth? Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Okay. Horrible. And I like lemon flavour. Oh, really sharp. Thankfully, being a Christian has nothing to do with eating lemons. But having courage is a wonderful gift that God gives us. So if there are things that are bothering you, concerning you, facing your fears, do it with God on your shoulder, his powerful spirit. And you can be as bold and brave as the little David who took on Goliath.